Greetings. Welcome, spiritual warriors, to Spiritual Warriorship, where we read, discuss books by His Holiness Bhaktitirtha Swami. And as I've said many times, there's quite a few books out there. And I hope you're purchasing them, have them, gotten them in your library, and are reading them, gratefully reading along with me, or ahead of me, or going on to another book. We are presently in Spiritual Warrior 4. Coping, we're doing, Spiritual Warrior 4 is conquering the enemies of the mind. You'd think I'd know that by now. But I'm learning I don't get upset when I don't remember. We're in Chapter 5, Coping with Depression. And we're more than halfway through that chapter, and I am trying to be careful not to do an overview because then we get caught up and not keep up with a rate that will finish a chapter. So I don't know who's out there, but I welcome you. And you know what? I've been encouraged. You don't know, I think after last week or one, I've been reading, and at some point I'm feeling, I'm reading this, is anybody listening? Are they understanding? Are they getting what Guru Bhaktitirtha Swami is saying? And I'm saying, well, maybe, I think even one time, this mind is really something, you gotta be careful. One time I think it even said, well, maybe you should take a couple weeks off. And I think I ignored that because this is not for me what I'm doing. This is service. I feel my service to Bhaktitirtha Swami, and I hope to all of you who are hearing and you're getting something from this to advance in your spiritual life. Well, the Lord hears and knows, and He'll come in every now and then to help you out. I got an email and late last week or early this week, I've lost track, from a young student in India. What's it? I wrote it down. Where in India? Kerala, India. Thanking me for doing these classes. He said he was struggling and going through all kinds of concerns. He went to Krishna.com and prayed to the Lord to help him find something on Krishna.com that could possibly help him, and he came across my broadcast, this Krishna.com Live. And he says it's helped him so much, and he thanked me for how I read. I'm not too fast. I speak clearly and distinctly so he can understand everything. So, if you ever doubt that the Lord in the heart doesn't know what's going on in there, He also knows what you're thinking, and He also reciprocates to help you to continue as long as it's something worthwhile. So that has encouraged me. So I'm back now, revved up. And we're in the section called, now I gave it to you, it's Spiritual Warrior 4, Conquering the Enemies of the Mind, Chapter 5, titled Coping with Depression. And we've been through the first part of it where Bhaktitirtha Swami, he tells us that what he wants to do with this chapter is to examine depression from a psychological, biological, and of course a spiritual perspective, which he does very well. So we've been through it, and I hope you've gotten something from it. It alerted you. Because, of course, when I go back, I always say, oh, I wonder if they got that. This was really great. I wonder, but I'm not going to do it again. Get the book if you don't have it, please. Krishna.com store, they have it. or you can go online to the publisher, harinampress.org. Okay? Okay. So tonight we're going to continue in the section where he says we now want to spend some time looking at solutions, or at least ways of dealing with depression in a healthy manner. And it says the first thing we really need, though, is to have spiritually minded therapists, or at least for therapists who are appreciating and appreciative of the spiritual culture. And what's most important, that they're following in the spiritual culture. So if any of you folks out there thinking of going back to school, or you are in school, can study your psychology and that therapy and all, but hang on, set your sadhana strong so you can understand the spiritual culture. He goes on, and I want to go through these. We did cover them. Maintain mind and body. What we're looking at, remember, are healthy ways to cope with depression. And he tells us we sometimes think that we can solve our problems through the execution of rituals. And those practices can help, but they have to be performed with sufficient depth and purity. So, since such depth is rare, especially now in Kali Yuga, additional help is needed to assist you in removing blocks. So this is one of the main reasons he tells us that he's offering these books. And this book especially, this book 4 and 5, which is Making the Mind Your Best Friend, he did them at the same time. And it's really to help aspiring transcendentalists obtain a better results in their practices and better control of the mind. By what? How do you do that? You have to eradicate the enemies, and we're going to talk about them in a minute. So we need to maintain body and soul together. And he mentions Bhakti Vinod Thakur explained that in order to develop a healthy community, we must balance the following 4 needs. We need to take care of the body. We need to properly stimulate the mind. We need to have a sense of social well-being. And we need to study spiritual texts. Okay? Now, we mentioned a minute ago the enemies of the mind. He tells us, imagine a situation in which 6 enemies constantly surround you and are incessantly waiting for the opportune moment to attack you when you put your guard down. As soon as you become lackadaisical, they will swiftly approach. However, we can try to sufficiently reinforce ourselves and strengthen our weak spots, knowing that Maya will attack us in these weak areas. I think I remember way back, and often here, Prabhupada said to his disciples, you're not afraid enough of Maya. We have to be ever mindful. Now, the 6 enemies are lust, anger, greed, bewilderment, intoxication, and envy. These are some of the ways in which depression and anxiety, gloom and frustration affect the mind. If we know the enemy's hiding place, we can keep our distance, right? Instead of remaining in an insecure position or allowing the enemy to constantly ambush us. And these enemies, of course, hide in the mind. And I've mentioned before when we did Spiritual Warrior 3, Chapter 7, I believe, studying the 12 qualities of a spiritual warrior, the very first quality he gave us was sense control and mastery of the mind. I keep saying I'm going to go back to that and write out the list of, he gives technologies to master this mind. So that's another part of coping healthily. We have to know the enemy, know where the enemy hides, and then take the steps to block him from taking over. Another aspect, he calls it relinquish selfishness. Now, he states if you find yourself in a state of depression, we can also examine the degree of self-centeredness or selfishness. And this description I love. There are two ways to play God. We play God when we see ourselves as superior and as the most important person. We also play God when we place ourselves in the center of thinking ourselves as the most inferior and most unfortunate person. Have you ever thought of it that way? Other times, people play God by considering that everything revolves around their problems. And then he gives the example, if you ask them, how are you? And I've said I'm learning to be cautious with that one myself. Especially some people, you know what's going to come when you've heard them for so long. One time I said to somebody, we had been sort of working on this, seeing the good in some things or watching what the mind is saying. And I think one day I just said to him, try to turn around everything you just said and make it a positive. You know? But it's true. Some people, they say, oh, I'm so glad you asked. My back hurts, my stomach's upset, my kid did this, and they run down the whole thing. But if we focus too much on our own misfortunes, it will reinforce the problems rather than eliminate them. So selflessness is one way of decreasing our problems. If we try to help someone else and try to go beyond our own immediate situation, we will see that God will give us the help we need and take away our own particular issues. And he told us that. He's promised that. You know what verse in the Bhagavad Gita where he promises that he'll maintain what we have and carry what we lack? You got it. 9:22. Bhagavad Gita. Where he says, but those who always worship me with exclusive devotion, meditating on my transcendental form, to them I carry what they lack and I preserve what they have. Depression means we are focusing too much on our own problems and withholding our love from others. the next idea gives us forgiveness and mindfulness. And I know you've heard that forgiveness, but if you've been following Bhaktitirtha Swami's works or tapes or website, he's given seminars on forgiveness and many classes on forgiveness, how it's important for our consciousness. He states that depression also results from a lack of forgiveness. Sometimes people have genuine issues, but they have not yet forgiven another person. And as he told us earlier, that the mind affects the body. And anger can even cause the body to attack its own self. So now he mentions mindfulness. And if you've been with us, I've lost track of weeks, but some weeks ago, we did the whole section on mindfulness, and we read from his meditation on being mindful of, remember, mindful of walking, mindful of talking, mindful of eating. It was so wonderful. But mindfulness is another beneficial practice. And these are all practices that can help free us of depression and mental challenges. It will help us constantly reflect at all times on God, who makes all these arrangements for us. Now that's another concept that's important in our spiritual life. And you as spiritual warrior, Bhaktitirtha Swami, if you've been listening to him constantly, whatever's going on, it's being arranged. As he said, reflect at all times on God, who makes all the arrangements for us. And when you can understand that, then you don't go into a panic or depression when it's not going the way you want it. It's like, stop. Look and listen and be mindful. What am I to learn? How am I to grow from this particular arrangement by the Lord? He tells us it will also help us to see how the Lord has already come forth in difficult times. And if you do stop, and that's what he mentioned here about the past, and with mindfulness and alertness, notice when you got to a certain point in some situation, and then it cleared up, cleared away. You knew you couldn't have handled that situation yourself. Next tells us that faith is most important. We will not have the ability to persevere without faith. But we can't fake it. We cannot fake faith. When certain aspects of a person's life are not going so well, his or her faith does get weaker. But our faith relates to what happened in the past, what is happening in the present, and what will happen in the future. And I know you've probably heard that expression. It's what's happening in the present, or what your action, words, and deeds are in the present, that will make your future. He states that only a rare person can maintain strong faith when they have had a difficult past and a rocky present. It is in our communities we want to create environments that will energize us, huh? And help increase our faith. Gratitude as a way of life. What are we looking at? We're looking at healthy ways of coping with depression. Now, sometimes he tells us our mental challenges become very stagnant because we do not move through them and we do not appreciate the past. The more we have gratitude, the more we create auspiciousness in the future. Sometimes the Supreme Personality of Godhead gives to us and sometimes he takes away. And that's not a new concept or idea. I'm sure we've experienced it, definitely have heard of it, and probably have said that to someone in the recent time, especially with people losing jobs and etc., etc. Won't go there. So as devotees, Bhaktitirtha Swami tells us we want to have such a grateful mindset that when God gives us wealth, we say thank you. When God takes it away and puts us in a state of impoverishment, we say thank you. We thank him then for protecting us from false pride. We thank him for any situation that allows us to keep life simple. The title, Attitude as a Way of Life. When God gives us good health, we can say, thank you, Lord, for your kindness, because you know how much I hate pain. You have given me such a nice, healthy body so that I can serve you. I will, if I have pain, I will simply blaspheme. If God gives us sickness or pain, then we say, thank you, Lord, for putting me in this state so that I can be more contemplative. It will help me to appreciate good health and give me a chance to slow down so that I can read more or be more attentive to my chanting. Or I can hear your tapes. And I speak from experience of having had a few falls and really had to be still. It was really like, okay, Lord, I will use this time now to focus on you. I remember one time I couldn't get out the bed, I don't know for how long. I couldn't even get to the computer, which was good. Because you can catch the news on there and get all caught up. If God makes us famous, we can say, thank you, Lord, because you know how much I need my ego stimulated. Thank you for helping me so that I can be a good devotee in the midst of all this fame. That's being grateful. And knowing who is the arranger. Huh? When God makes us infamous, we can still say, thank you, Lord, for making me very humble. You have put me into a situation so that I will not think of myself as the proprietor or controller. Huh? So whatever your situation, whatever's going on, you can have an attitude of gratitude. If we can just develop this consciousness and constantly thank the Supreme in any situation, we will be able to learn and grow from any circumstance. We will make the auspicious situation more auspicious, and we will turn any inauspiciousness situation into an auspicious one. It will become a learning experience, and that's what we're here on in this material world, to learn again or be reminded again of who we are as eternal being, who God is, and we are his parts and parcels. We're here to learn, so we need the experience for learning. If you didn't go to school or were sent to school to learn your letters, your numbers, and how to put them together, then you'd be an idiot. So we've been placed here. We mustn't lose this opportunity. And we must be grateful because the Lord, he knows exactly what we need to experience, to acquire that learning experience. So it will become a learning experience, and as we honor it, the experience, with gratitude, Krishna will naturally make arrangements for us. He tells us now about the importance of attitude. He reminds us again that the mind is our greatest enemy, although we can make it our greatest friend. Now don't forget, Spiritual Warrior 5 is all about tools, techniques, technologies, methodology of making the mind your friend. So if you are working on that, leaning towards that, Spiritual Warrior 5, okay? So what we want to do, though, it depends on our attitude. What we want to develop humility, not low self-esteem. Now, Rupa Goswami and many other great acharyas have all mentioned the importance of humility. But it does not mean that we should have low self-esteem. It means we should have such a high esteem for the spiritual teachers, scriptures, and the Supreme Lord, that we feel awed by their appreciation for the higher spiritual reality. And then we desire and yearn for that ourselves. The closer we come to the Supreme Lord, the more we advance. The more we see the magnanimous nature, beauty, and ability of God, the more it will humble us. You know, what flashed in my mind reading that, the beauty of God and nature, I don't know why my mind went back to some years ago when I was living in Pennsylvania. And it was the fall of the year, and you know in the north the leaves change colors, they're beautiful colors. And someone had taken me, I don't know, a doctor's appointment, but anyway, we were on the road, and the mountains, going through the mountains, and the colors were breathtaking. And at some point we hit a patch of orange, reds, yellows, whatever, and the tears just came to my eyes because it was like no human could even think to combine the colors that way and have them so bright and brilliant. So there has to be a higher power, the Lord. And this just reminded me that the more we see the magnanimous nature, beauty, and ability of God, the more it will humble us. With this side, he's tremendous. As we genuinely advance, we receive more from the Lord, but we still simultaneously feel what? More humble. We will realize that the Supreme Lord gives us far more than our actual quality. We literally become more humble due to contact with such greatness. And that's where you can't even think of being selfish when you're seeing the beauty of the Lord. He mentions here, the author, that Srimad Bhagavatam 10:14-8 mentions that one should have faith in spite of suffering due to the experiences of past karma. And he quotes something from that text, which I love very much. I was about to put myself down again. I copied it so many times, had it nearby, and yet I don't remember it, but it's okay. I get it when I read it and when I hear it, and I keep being reminded. My dear Lord, it states, one who earnestly waits for you to bestow your causeless mercy upon him, all the while patiently suffering the reactions of his past misdeeds and offering you respectful obeisances with his heart, words, and body, is surely eligible for liberation, for it has become his rightful claim. End quote. Now Srila Sridhar Swami explains the concept of Daya Bhak in his commentary on this verse. And you know the story that just as a legitimate son simply has to remain alive in order to gain his inheritance when his father dies. The same with us in spirituality. What does it say? That simply remain alive in Krishna consciousness, following the regulative principles of Bhakti Yoga, you automatically become eligible to receive the mercy of the personality of God. Simple, isn't it? Basically, the father has written a will that includes his son, daughter, his inheritors. So in order to receive their inheritance, they simply have to remain alive. It is already arranged and legally organized. And all is already arranged for us. Krishna has his plan for us. And we've been given, the acharyas have come, and we've been given what to do, when to do it, and how. And all we have to do is practice. And if we've forgotten, somehow got covered with this material nature, we have saints, I call them, like Bhakti Tirtha Swami, sadhus who've come and are revealing to us again and again, so that when we go to our scriptures and we read, we're more mindful of what it's telling us. Because all he's telling us is, if you read Bhagavad Gita, Srimad Bhagavatam, you will see it there. I call it, he's putting it in second grade language, and maybe I'll grasp it this lifetime. So he says that if we simply maintain our sadhana and continue with our devotion in spite of many setbacks and challenges, we can return to the spiritual world. Setbacks happen in institutions, families, and to us individually, but we just have to avoid getting too depressed, discouraged, and disappointed. We should try to thank the Lord and try to learn from the circumstances. We wait for the Supreme Lord to do better than we could have done for ourselves. This means that we need steady faith and perseverance. We can all encourage each other by first trying to have that faith, and that faith will spill over and help someone else. In this way, we will inherit the kingdom of God. So if you're hearing this and you're planning to practice it, and this way the next section is called helping others, and you do help others. I'm sure you have found if someone is coming at you with some distressful situation and you remember the Lord and His mercy to you and to others, every one of us are receiving it, and you begin to tell them that, or you'll tell them a story, you can see a shift in their consciousness. So he's saying here that for those of you, some of you may work in institutions in which people suffer from schizophrenia and neurosis, psychosis, or depression. But as we've said, some of them are possessed and some are just so stressed out by the enemies of the mind. What can we do to help such people? Just based on all you've been hearing, I'm sure right now you can maybe mention one or two things. But he says, first, if necessary, we must see that they get relevant understanding and professional help. In some cases, we can also help some people the best simply by offering them prasadam. Prabhupada said, give them prasadam. Or letting them constantly hear the holy names of God. Now, in other cases, we can help a person through our own devotion, especially our relatives. By engaging in our spiritual practices, they will get some credit. Just by having a devotee in the family, even previous generations will benefit. Srila Bhaktisiddhanta states, when a great saint, a pure devotee, appears in a family, then his ancestors and descendants for 100 generations each are elevated. When a devotee of the middle stature, Majjhima Bhagavata, appears in a family, then his ancestors and descendants for 14 generations each are elevated. When a neophyte devotee appears in a family, then his ancestors and descendants for 3 generations each are elevated. If someone in our family suffers from depression or even a serious mental disturbance, we can help them by intensifying our own devotion. I remember at some point I sort of had an understanding of this, and someone may be going through something, a family member, and I would try to encourage them to chant more sincerely, because truly, some situations, there's nothing physically you can do. It's really have to leave it up to the Lord's arrangement, what their consciousness is, and what they have to learn from the experience they're going through. But as he said, you can intensify your own devotion. You can be more attentive in your chanting. Or just talk to God. I don't know if any of you are around to remember. You're around now. Were around when Stevie Wonder, the blind piano player, musician, he's still alive. I think I saw him some time ago. But he had a piece out called Have a Little Talk with God. And I can really appreciate that because I'm always talking to him. Should let him rest sometimes, but I need to feel secure that he's hearing me. So he says that what we can do also, we can also talk with them, with his family members, and help free them of some of their attachments. Because an excessive focus on their own problem will actually lead them into their particular mental crisis. We can also help them develop more gratitude and give more love that will then shelter them. Sometimes we have to help them understand the payoffs. Some people maintain their depression because of what they seemingly get in return. For instance, they want sympathy. They use it as an exchange. They use it as an excuse to not make themselves more available. They want attention from others, or they use it as a reason to quit their jobs. Others hide behind depression to cover up other problems. Most times, these payoffs are deeply unconscious. I feel a sneeze coming. Hold on. Excuse me. Possession also happens due to the lowness of a person's consciousness, since it attracts the presence of such beings. As a person raises their consciousness, such entities will not remain in the environment because they will not be able to connect with the person. Just as filth attracts rats and insects, a low consciousness will attract certain entities. However, as we intensify our consciousness through devotional reflections, it will create some barriers of psychic and spiritual protection. As mental illness increases, we will all need more protection from the environment for ourselves and for our families. We can get that protection through strong sadhana or spiritual practices and association. And that's the end of the section on healthy ways to cope with depression. Now, what I'm going to do, it's getting near time to end. By the way, I found this for myself. I want to do more research. Remember, we listed the 4 needs that Bhakti Vinod Thakur said was needed. It's from Sri Chaitanya, what is this? Shikshamritam. Okay, I want to really see if I can find that. I want to study that a little more. Now, what he has here, the rest in this particular section, and I've got an idea, and since I'm not technical, I don't know. It's called 32 Ways to Cope with Depression. I'm not going to read these out because a lot of it covers what we have just been through, or keywords to what we did in the first half. I'm going to ask around. My technician, she isn't here tonight, but I got another super duper tech tonight. If there's a way of getting these 32 ways to cope with depression in such a form that you all could, download it, upload it. How technical I am. But that's what I'm going to check and see if that can be done. And then it can be done. Okay. When we get that done, and then you all could get this list and upload it, download it, get it in your computer, okay? Now, there was just, one more section, and I'm just gonna, he has a section called 6 Steps to End Panic Attacks. And I'm gonna go just read them as he's given them to us. How many people in chat room? Yeah, well, who's that? Give me name.
No,
3. Ruban Mahai.
He had to leave.
Oh.
Resi Kananda, Manu, and Edgar.
Oh. Who? Edgar. Edgar's there. Hi, Edgar. Welcome. And who else?
Manu
Manu.
and Resi Kananda.
Rasi Kananda. That sounds like 2 of my very, very favorite. Not that all of you are my favorite. But let's look at what he says here about 6 steps to end panic attack. And this may help you if someone in your environment, or even you yourself. He says, number 1, give yourself permission to feel anxious. That's interesting because I never thought of it as a panic attack, but I've been allowing myself, there's certain times anxiety comes up, or I don't know, over something I think I should have done. Either I think I should have done it, or I think I should have done it a different way, or why didn't I do it? But I have been giving myself permission. It's okay to feel that way, just next time it comes up, do it. So he says, know the situation will go away and accept the understanding that it will not kill you, because fear actually feeds the problem. 2, ask yourself what is really bothering you at the moment. What exactly are your immediate scary thoughts and reflections? Have to be honest. Be honest with yourself. 3, see it as excitement, not anxiety. I like that one. Excitement is normal and natural. It is a sign of being attentive and responsive. 4, use positive self-talk. Whatever we internally talk about on a regular basis, we will get more of it in the future. 5, distract yourself. Use the adrenaline energy to act productively. By changing our bodily activities, we change our mental activities. And 6, learn to laugh at yourself. Laughing is the topmost therapy. We will discuss this in the next chapter. So, I hope this chapter, Coping with Depression, has been helpful, has made you mindful and alert and realize if Krishna's arranging everything, what's to get depressed about? But we just have to, as he said at the last point here, our association, our self-talk, we have to get all of those in order. So I'm going to end now. Are there any questions, comments, based on what you've heard tonight?
Not yet.
Not yet. Okay. Nothing. While you're thinking or writing or getting ready to go to bed, as I will shortly, I want to tell you that I will not be here next Friday. I will ask that they play one of our previous programs. But I plan to be back the following week. And we'll be ready for a new adventure. Another chapter. We have about 2 more chapters in the Spiritual Warrior 4. The next is addiction and the process of recovery. And the final chapter in this book has to do with laughter. Laughter, good for the body and soul. So maybe we'll work on those, but I have to meditate on it, ask guidance from my Gurudev. And I wish all of you a blessed, blessed week with much enlightenment and helping of others and higher consciousness. And I thank you all for being there this evening.
We have one question.
I do? Okay.
How to know if the perception of being misaligned is due to actual misalignment of ourselves or misalignment of our environments?
I need to ask what you mean by misalignment. I go to a chiropractor for misalignment, so, but you're talking consciousness, I'm sure. I'm not quite sure what you mean.
Yeah.
Who's that? Who's asking that?
Rasikananda.
Oh, Rasikananda. I bet he has an answer. What do you think?
It says, yeah, basically, like the consciousness misalignment.
Okay.
Misalignment.
Okay. Is that like being out of balance? Misalignment of consciousness. The language. Because when I hear misalignment, of course, as I say, I think of my chiropractor. But we gave some, I don't know if I can answer if I'm not quite clear. What's he saying?
If there's a problem, how to know if it is my fault, someone else's, or something other than that?
If there's a problem. One from Bhakti Tirtha Swami. I think I have it right here. 4 principles for community building. Anytime that there's a problem in a relationship, you should see it as if it is your own fault. Even if others are to blame, you will only add to the problem by considering them to be at fault. How do you like that? It's your problem. See it as your fault. And then, as he mentioned, I'm sure we mentioned, you then say to the Lord, thank you for bringing this into my experience. Show me, guide me how I can learn from it, grow from it. And the other thing is, he said, forgiveness and mindfulness. Whatever it is, even if he said here, even if they're to blame, it's still your fault. And what he used to tell us is my fault because I wasn't loving enough to help that person not have that kind of behavior. So it's really my fault. So at that time, I must align myself with my God consciousness, my sadhana, my devotion, so that the Lord will reciprocate and I will be aligned again. And because right now I'm dealing with it. Within the past week, I was dealing with a personality. And when I found myself, I've said this to many people, it gets to the point that all I can say is, dear Lord, I release so-and-so, the name, to your loving care. You know what's best for them. You know how to take care of them. And help me to be more loving. Does that help?
He says, very good. That's nice. I like that very much.
I'm so glad. You brought a smile to my face. Okay, any other comment, question?
Perfect.
Okay, everybody's all right? Okay, so I wish you a blessed week, a blessed night, and continued growth, spiritual growth and advancement. And just remember who's the arranger and control of everything. All right? And you have that wonderful relationship with him. You're his eternal servant. Okay, thank you. Hope to see you again. Not next week, but week after next. Hare Krishna.